Good afternoon, everybody. This is David Malonte with the Kentucky Department of Education. We're going to go ahead and get started. Just as a note, this meeting is being recorded so we can have it posted for reference later on. You probably see a document that I have up, which is one of the two that I sent yesterday. Our plan is to review each of the documents I sent out. I do want to go over some important points, especially on the notes page. I don't have a PowerPoint presentation this afternoon, but I'm going to work mostly from those two documents, and then I will provide a live demonstration with some highlights about the GMAP system where the EANS2 applications are going to be entered. So if you have any questions today, feel free to put them in the chat box. We're going to stop intermittently and address any questions that we have. And from that point, we'll move on to the next section. So Elisa is going to be monitoring the chat for us. If there's something we cannot answer for you today, we'll get back with an answer to the group. Just so you have pertinent information at hand. So what I'm going to start with this afternoon is just going through the notes page that I sent out yesterday. There are several notes in there of importance. But overall, I want to say if you participated in this program in the first round, most of the requirements for the second round are the same. I'm going to point out some areas where they do differ. If you did not participate in the first round, this will be a good cheat sheet for you to use to understand what the eligibility, allowable costs are, and to give you an idea of what the timelines are going to be. So just to start off, the purpose of the second round of EANS funding is to address impacts caused by COVID-19. Many of those things were academic in nature. Many of those things could be just space issues within buildings or locations. And so, just like last time, those same types of issues would apply here. One of the things that has changed with this program in the second round is there's an addition to the eligibility requirements. The statute required us as a state to have a low income threshold for eligibility. The U.S. Department of Education was really pushing for that to be 40%, and that kind of ties back to the Title I Part A world, where there are some eligibility requirements for schools to participate and run certain programs in that under that particular program. We did a little bit of data analysis and determined that 40% meant we would be able to serve very few private schools under the second round. So we lobbied for and put in our application, and it was approved that our low income threshold would be 20%. For some of you, the sources of data that may be used would be the free and reduced price lunch participation. However, if you do not participate or don't have that particular data handy to you, there are other sources of data such as scholarship or financial assistance data that might be used. So keep that in mind. Last time we also allowed you to use the thresholds for qualifying and posting the or qualifying for low-income lunch status, and we posted that information on the EANS1 page, the thresholds and how you go about determining that. The thing about this data is you will need to be able to verify that at some point. If an auditor comes to our house knocking on the door and say, hey, KDE, we need to monitor this. Just to kind of get you in the loop, we have been working with the state auditor's office, who has begun to do some monitoring of the first round of EANs. So we expect that to be the case for the second round as well. And there are many different sources of data or pieces of documentation that they may ask for, and that could be one. The school must have existed and operated prior to March 13th, 2020. That is exactly the same as it was in the first round. March 13th was the date the president declared an emergency. The school must be nonprofit, and in this case, or in this state, Kentucky homeschools are considered to be nonprofit by nature as long as they are not charging tuition for services, or they must be registered as a nonprofit entity if they are. The school must be accredited, licensed, or otherwise approved to operate in accordance with state law. And in this state, private schools are approved to operate within the state without accreditation, licensure, or certification. That includes homeschools. And finally, the school must not be requesting or will not request assistance through the Small Business Act. Any program made available on or after the date of enactment of the American Rescue Plan, and that enactment date was March 11th, 2021. However, if you did participate in those programs under other emergency statutes, you are able to participate under this program. So that last bullet there only limits if you are planning to participate in programs authorized on or after March 11th, 2021. So we're going to talk a little bit about allowable costs as well. For the most part, allowable costs are the same as under the previous program. So at one point in the application process, we are going to make you ask you to align that to the program's intent. So we're going to ask you to define the impacts that COVID-19 had on your school. The big difference here is that no reimbursements are allowed under EANS 2. That is just part of the statute that was authorized for this particular program under the American Rescue Plan. And it specifically states that state education agencies cannot provide for reimbursements under this program. However, if you look down the list of allowable activity categories, other than that reimbursement model, the other categories are going to be the same. So again, it's everything from supplies to sanitize and disinfect, all the way down to, providing materials or equipment or other things that allow you to follow CDC recommendations, testing, expanding testing capacity, anything with improving educational access to educational technology, and initiating and maintaining remote or hybrid learning to address learning loss. So I didn't go through every one of those, but they are essentially the same as the very first round. These are the categories, again, that you're going to be assigning budgetary amounts to in the second part of the application, and that you're going to provide us some narrative with. And then when it comes to asking us to procure those items, those will be on the procurement forms. The application, like I said previously, is a two-part application. Part one, which we are going to talk about today, is a one-page intent to participate. So we are going to be collecting some data from you to determine eligibility and to determine ultimately allocations. The funding application, the second part of the application, has several parts, including a purpose and introduction. So it just serves as some reminders about allowable costs and eligibility. There is a single assurance page, which instead of collecting them through email copies or faxed copies, you're going to certify some assurances within that application, and it's basically a checkbox. The program details, you are going to narrate for us the impact that you saw, and you're going to talk a little bit about participation in prior emergency programs that may have been small business programs, that may have been EANS 1, or that may have been services through the CARES Act through a local district. And then the last part is a budget where you're going to allocate costs and narrate a description of those costs as well. So we will not talk about the second part today. We have scheduled a second webinar to go through that particular piece once we have allocations posted and issued and we're ready to open that up. But we will focus on the intent to participate today. And then at the bottom, last thing on this particular notes page is the set of important dates. For this particular piece, the deadline for you to submit the intent to participate is going to be November 22nd. I have scheduled some time for myself to get into the intent to participate, to have our GMAP program pull the data from that, and we're going to use that data at that point to actually assess eligibility and to assign allocations or funding amounts for that. Note that the second webinar with another GMAP demonstration is November 30th. That was sent out, that particular date was sent out along with this one last week in an email. So you should be preparing for that, and kind of gives you some deadlines for we've put on ourselves for us to kind of get in there and evaluate applications and assign final notices of assistance and therefore. So Elise, do we have any questions at this point?
We have two questions, but also Kathy Cornett mentioned that she did not receive the printable agenda, and I was going to try to drop these two into the chat box, but for some reason I don't have attachments. Are you able to do that, David or Kay? Could you drop those in?
I might be able to while you're kind of going through the questions. Let me see if I can get in there and drop those in maybe.
Okay. Christy has a question. Is it based on the number of students that qualified for assistance or a certain income level, the threshold?
It is based on those that would be eligible for low income assistance. There are some schools that provide tuition assistance to every student. And in the first round, we asked them to base their counts, their low income counts, on the number of low income eligible students in that particular case.
Okay. And then Christy also had a follow-up question. Also, are we allowed to use the 2021 school year for qualification?
The 1920 school year is the only school year that would be allowed.
Okay. And if we could just remind some people to mute too as you come into the meeting, that would be great as far as feedback. Those are the only questions, David, for this section as of right now.
I am. I'm looking at the chat, and I do not have a place to.
I don't either, but
Anything.
Kathy said she got it. So
Okay. Okay.
maybe if, I don't know what's going on with it either, but if you are somebody here and you don't have the printable, you could always email me. I have access to them. It's elise.crisp@Kentucky. No, did I get that right? At education.ky.gov. Most of you have my email after the meeting's over, and I can resend those to you.
And my sharing screen is also different, so I'm going to have to fumble with that just a little bit. Which I don't know why it is. It was not like that yesterday.
Okay, so Kathy says, so not 21-22 low income, 2021 is the data we use. I think David said 19-20. Is that correct?
Has to be
David?
from school year 1920, yes. Some of you may find that the same data would work for you, and that's okay if you participated in the first round. If that same data works for you, because the first round was based on 1920 numbers as well, that's absolutely okay. Elise, any other questions?
No, not at this time. So I'll
Okay.
mute and we'll wait until you get finished with this section.
Okay, can you see what I've pulled up, the step-by-step?
I can see it, yes.
Okay, great. So the second thing I sent out yesterday as an attachment was this step-by-step guide for completing the EANS 2 intent to participate in GMAP. It has a link to guide you to the correct page. I will tell you today I'm going to be working on a test site. When you log in or when you click this link, it's going to take you to a production site, which is actually where you should be doing all of your work. So that's one difference you'll see in today. You'll notice that in some of the screenshots, like the one right here at the bottom of the page, it says this is a test site. And that's because we don't actually have access to go into the production site and act as a user that is for you all to actually use. So I used a test site. I had our vendor set up just a sort of a fake private school that I could work through and pull some of these screenshots from. So I am not going to go through this step by step. I think it's easy enough to follow, but I do want to point out some particular things within this step by step. So everybody, when you log in, the person that can log in and begin the application or begin the intent is the person we collected as your contact through email on November 5th. I think we set a date of November 5th for anybody to give us that contact information. So whoever was submitted, their email address will be the login email address for that. Everybody will have the same temporary password, and that's Kentucky 1 exclamation point with a capital K. Once you log in for the first time, you should receive an email that prompts you to reset your password because everybody has the same password. If somebody has access to your email address, they could log in as you with that one-time password. So you'll get an email address from this particular address, gmap.noreply@egrantsmanagement.com, that will prompt you to reset that email or that password, sorry. You will need to, if you don't see it in your inbox, make sure you check clutter, junk, or your spam, just to make sure that it didn't go there. And if you don't receive one, you can get in touch with me or Elise and we'll work out the issue with you. The second thing you'll see is there is a series of menus, particularly on this left-hand side. And this particular document walks you step by step with, as you see arrows here, highlighting where you need to click. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward.
Hey, David, can you enlarge just a little
Sure,
bit?
sure.
Just as you're pointing out that box, the type is pretty small.
Okay, sure. Let me see if I can get in here and enlarge it. Tell me how that looks.
Better for me.
Better. I can probably go up a notch if I need to. So again, each of the clicks is indicated by an arrow. There is some hovering that you'll have to do. For example, on this funding menu, when you want this pop-out menu to come up, you do have to hover instead of click, and then come over and select application supplements, for example. Again, on step number 4, there are some places to check that you have the right application year open. This should be under the year 2022. It should automatically populate for you as 2022, and it should be active. And there's a status bar at the top of the page, which on the top of what's called the sections page, which I'll show you in just a minute. That status bar, when you are ready to change the status, is always in the same place. And essentially, when you are ready to open up your application and ready to submit the data and information in its final form, in each of those places, you will change the status of your application or intent. So the status change, you'll be going from not started to started, and then in the end from started to complete. See what else. Be aware there are some notes within the intent step by step to kind of point you in the right direction on a couple things. For example, in step 6B, I've put some notes in there about percentage of low income. I've tried to highlight all the notes in red where they might need to stand out for you. So hopefully that is helpful. And then we'll get into the page in just a second. And this is completely what the page looks like for the intent. So it is 1, 2, 3 things to fill out at the top. You're going to enter some data at the bottom, click a checkbox, and if you're going to use the second data source, then you're going to tell us what the data source is, which might be tuition assistance. It could be anything other than free and reduced lunch price meals as your data source.
David, there's a couple of questions related to that. So while you're on that screen, would it be okay if we took those now? So first I'm going to ask Jennifer O'Reilly's question. She's asking, do we include preschool students to be counted in the enrollment since they are not full-time?
Do not include preschool students. Preschools essentially are not eligible under this program, so you can count any students from K to 12.
Okay. Can we use both scholarships and free and reduced lunch towards our 20%?
My answer for that right now would be a no, because I am assuming some of those kids would be double counted. Kay, do you have an opinion on that?
Yes, I do. You know, in the section where it says, do you have an alternative method? I would suggest that you could use either method to include a child, but do not double count.
Yeah.
So if you've got 100 kids and 25 are free and reduced lunch, and of those 25, 12 are also receiving some sort of financial scholarship, you can't count them in both buckets. The two buckets would have to be mutually exclusive, but the total number could come from the combined.
Yeah, I like that answer too. So yeah, great point, Kay. Thank you.
Okay. Camille asks, is there any chance that those of us with percentages just under 20% will get any money at a later date if it's not all requested?
There is not a chance, and if you think you might be in that boat, you may want to look at enrollment and low-income numbers at different points during the year, during the 1920 school year. We have to use that 20% threshold as one of our eligibility criteria, and we cannot go below that.
Okay. And then Christy asks, if we use tuition assistance, can we get an income threshold?
An income threshold that, yeah, I would, it depends on what your policy is too. Is that something that you can maybe follow up with me through email on? Because I'll need to, that's probably a little more complicated question than I'm prepared to answer right here. But if you could kind of guide me on what your current threshold is and pose the question again to me directly in email, that would be good. And then I can get back with you either today or tomorrow as soon as I can.
Okay, Christy said she would do that. She'll follow up with email.
Okay, great.
That's
Anything?
it for right now.
Okay, great.
That's it for right now.
Great. One of the key features in this particular system is it has dedicated navigation buttons. I want to point that out right under that page screenshot that we were just on. You cannot use the back or forward buttons in your browser to navigate in this system. Okay, if you do that, you are most likely going to lose the work on the page that you were working on. So there are particular buttons called Save and Go To. You can see right here that as you're navigating within this system, you're putting data in. When you want to save it, you can click Save and go to the current page, and it just refreshes that with saved data. Or as you navigate, you want to go hover over Save and Go To, and in this particular case, I'm just directing you back to the sections page, which at that point it saves your data and takes you to the page that you direct it to go to. So I think that is very important. One other thing that I'll point out to you is this system has a safety feature of a timer. So if you were to walk away from your desk, if you're gone more than an hour, it's going to log you out and not save your data. Okay, if you don't push save current page or save and go to another page, it will log you out and you'll lose that data. And that's just a safety feature to keep people from coming into your office, playing around with the application while you're not aware if you walk away. So just be aware of that timer, and I'll point that out on the page, the pages as we get into the actual application. And then this is a 7-step process with some sub-steps here and there, but the last thing you're going to do is you're going to change your intent to participate to the completed stage. Once you do that, we know that you have submitted your data, that it is in its final form, and we will be collecting the data for allocating from those that have completed and fully submitted. So there are a couple steps to go through there. Okay. Elise, any other questions on this particular piece?
Well, I have one general question from Suzanne about
Sure.
Her business manager is leaving work in an hour and won't be back until after Thanksgiving. Is there any wiggle room with getting this information submitted to participate after the holiday next week?
So there is not. We're on a very tight timeline. I'm going to pull the data on the 23rd, the morning of the 23rd. The good thing about this system is it is accessible from any location. So if that person has the step-by-step this guide and knows their login, knows their email, and can use this temporary password, they can get in there and do the work in no time. The only part that might contribute to some slowdowns is if you have not collected the data on your low-income kids and your total enrollment from school year 1920. But if they have that data in hand, this can be accessed from anywhere in the world. But we do have to have it by the end of the day, by midnight on the 22nd, in order for us to pull the data. That's a good question.
There are not any other questions in the chat box at this time.
Okay.
David, so I don't.
Let me know if you can see the web browser.
I can see it. You might try to make it larger one more time. I don't know.
Okay.
If it's lost it.
Let me see if I can do this.
There you go.
How's that look?
Yep.
Okay. So essentially, when you click the link at the top of that step-by-step document, you're going to reach a page that looks like this, and this is the landing page for logging in. There are some accessible links here. This particular system does have public access, so as a person that's not from a private school, when your application is complete, I could get in there and take a look at what you put in your application. However, in order to access the actual application, you are going to have to sign in order to complete it. Like I said at the top, this one says it's a test site, but it mirrors the production site where you will go to complete your actual work. So I'm going to log in here. I'm going to pretend that I am somebody else today. This is just going to take me into a fake private school that we've set up. And when you log in, you're going to see a screen like this with lots of menus on the left-hand side. One of those menus in particular is going to take you to your intent to participate, and that is the funding menu. You'll see funding applications at the top, but where you will want to go is application supplements. Okay, so if you click on application supplements, it's going to take you to the page with a link to get into the intent. So you'll notice that mine automatically came up as 2022 and active. And from there, all I need to do is click on this link, which will open up the intent, or it's going to take us to the page where we can get to it. This page is called the sections page. It's kind of the landing page for the intent overall. It allows you to do your status changes up front or up top. It allows you to get into the intent to participate itself. Okay. It will tell you if there are any validation errors. So we've put some required things that you have to provide narrative or click. If those aren't clicked, for example, it will bring an error up down here, which I'm not going to walk through today, but if you are getting an error, you can come back here and click on that particular error. And it also allows you to print the intent itself. So you can click on print either there or there, since this is one page, and it will print for you. Generally, what it's going to do in something small like this is automatically generate a PDF for you to print from. If it doesn't, and it says the PDF is taking too long to generate, it's going to wind up here in the resources. Okay. And then you can print from that particular page. However, as you see up at the top, I've already changed the status here a couple times actually, and currently I'm in revision started. That is not necessarily going to be a useful thing here to start a revision, but in the next part of the application, it might come in handy. We've seen instances, for example, where we have a fully submitted and approved application, but then people want to go back and make some revisions because needs are emerging, so they can start a revision to do that. The change status link is here, so in the beginning, you're going to have to change your status to intent to participate started, and in the end, when you're ready to complete and submit, you'll have to change it to intent to participate completed. Okay, so just to give you an idea. One of the things we have not used, but we will use for the second part of the application is a help for current page. So for every page in the second part of the application, we'll have a help document for you that you can access through this link. Anything else, Elise, that you can think of I need to address on the sections page?
Just don't use that back arrow. You may have said that, but when you're in your browser, don't use the back arrow.
Yeah.
One other thing that's helpful if you're having to work with multiple pages, and I'm not sure that you will with Eanes too, but if you did, it's helpful to open GMAP in two separate browsers so that if you have two screens, you can be looking at one page while looking at another. Do you want to take two questions now, or do you want to wait? There's still about the percentage in the low income. So Carrie wonders, she just wants to make sure she understands correctly. If we are going to use scholarship financial assistance, can only the students that qualify for low income assistance count towards the percentage, or is it anyone that we give scholarship and financial aid to?
Only those who would qualify as a low-income student.
Okay, and then Debbie James asks, if we participated in Eanes 1, we should use all the same information for enrollment and low income percentage as in that application. Is that correct?
If that data puts you at or above the 20% threshold, it would be perfectly okay to use that particular data. Yes. Both data sets both programs, I should say, require the use of 2019-20 school year enrollment and low income data. So yeah, that would be okay. Anything else, Elise?
Not in the chat box at this time.
One thing I do want to point out is that timer, I've got it enlarged, but it's right here at the bottom of my screen. If you don't have it enlarged, it'll be right under that. It'll say your name, and then it'll say production on your end, and it'll be right down there. But you notice it's been counting down. We've been on this page for a little over 5 minutes. Once it gets to 0, it is going to log me out. However, when I click on this Eanes intent to participate, you're going to notice that my timer does start over again. So as you're hitting that save and go to or moving through the links, it is going to restart your timer every time. So I've already kind of worked through this in this test intent and put the information in. It's very simple, very self-explanatory. The contact information is up front or at the top. I mean, there is your enrollment, a low income and then enrollment, and it will calculate your percentage on its own. There's just a formula in the background that does the work for you. All you have to enter is your number of low income and then your number of enrolled students for the 1920 school year. At the bottom, you're going to select your data source. Here I've selected that I've used student eligibility for free and reduced price lunch. If I wanted to change that, I could click that. But if I do click this bottom button here, I do have to say that I am using low income tuition assistance data. I believe this is one of the areas where we put in a validation. So if you click this bottom button, you do have to provide a narrative.
David,
So that's it for that particular page. That's it. Yes.
so will we be given low income thresholds of using scholarship and financial aid? The threshold stays the same, doesn't it?
So if you have a particular, if you have, I think they're asking if we use tuition assistance, will we provide what is the low income threshold? Let me, when I finish this, remind me, Elise, I'll go back to the EANS page and pull up a document or show them some links for federal data they might be able to use to substantiate that. So don't let me forget that.
Okay. Federal data links.
Yeah.
Okay. Can someone type in the answer to Carrie's question about the usage of scholarships? I probably will hold off on that and type it in at the end if that's okay, because I'm trying to monitor the questions and pay attention at the same time to the presentation. Is that okay, David, if we go back and fill in the answers at the end?
Yeah, that'd be fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else?
No, not right now.
Okay. You'll notice in this program, in this platform, you have save and go to buttons at the bottom and the top. If I've changed some data here, so if I just want to save it and stay on the same page, I can hover over save and go to, click current page. It'll take a second to refresh. That data has effectively been saved that I changed at the bottom. If I were to change anything else, as long as I'm using this save and go to button and navigating from there, it automatically saves. Okay, so I'm gonna, so once you complete this particular information, I'm gonna go save and go to sections. The last thing you'll have to do is change the status up here. Again, in step number 7 in your step-by-step guide, you're going to change to EANS to intent to participate completed. But I'll give you an idea of what that looks like. So if I wanted to save this as a revision, I would just click that link. It's going to give you a warning. You're about to change the status. I'm going to hit confirm because I want to go that way. And then you see the status change from revision started to revision completed. Okay. And that's it. Once you complete and change the status in step number 7, that is all you have to do for this particular intent. Anything else that's come in?
Yes, a few questions.
Okay.
So Monica is somebody who has taken on EANS 1 after it looks like somebody left the school, and she's wondering, is there somewhere that she could find her original application to access the low income data? So you guys did that in SurveyMonkey, I think, David. So I think she's asking. Yeah,
Monica, send an email to me, David Malonte, and I think I can pull that out of the EANS 1 SharePoint folders we're using.
Okay, and Carrie asks, is there any major change in the qualifications from EANS 1 to EANS 2?
I think the main change is that poverty threshold. The other thing would be participation in the Small Business Act programs after the enactment of the American Rescue Plan. Those would be the two main changes. Again, if you did participate in Small Business Act programs prior to the date that's in your notes, the enactment of the American Rescue Plan, that's okay. But if you have or plan to participate in programs authorized after that date, that would preclude you from participating here. So those are the two big changes.
Okay. And Leanne is asking, we use income thresholds from 2020 or 2019?
Thresholds that would have been collected during the 2019, 2020, so the 1920 school year. Generally from, I don't know, August to the next May or June. So August of 19 through May or June of 2020.
Okay. And then Cindy says, what's the website we go to? I'm not sure, Cindy, can you specify which website? Are you asking about the one David was going to provide for federal data links, or are you talking about the EANS page on the KDE website?
Elise, you may have been referring to the GMAP site as well.
Yeah, that the link to GMAP, if that's what it is at the top. I think it's step number 1 in the step-by-step document. However, I do want to kind of briefly go in and show them where they can find that low income information. So the first thing you'll do is get to our homepage, education.ky.gov, and you can search for the word EANS, E-A-N-S, at the top. And the very first link you're going to get to will be the page for this is really information related to mostly the first round. However, at the very bottom on the right-hand side, there is a resource for determining low-income eligibility. This might kind of guide those people that have questions about what the threshold is. And if they don't have a standard threshold already, that they may use data from the Department of Agriculture for determining who would actually participate in those low-income, low or free and reduced lunch priced meals program for the 1920 school year. In this link right here, will walk you through to a page that will kind of talk you through what information is here and what the rates would actually be. At the bottom here, it kind of walks you through what the rates are for July 1, 19 to June 30, 2020. Okay, so you can use this chart to really see which of if you don't have a standard threshold already for tuition assistance, to see which kids would be eligible for free and reduced lunch, and then use that particular piece as your low income threshold. The thing is, you will want to keep some records if you're going through this. If you don't have standard data through a student information system or a lunch program already, you will need to keep some records on this is how we got to our count of low income kids. We used this particular form. We had data collected, and from that data we were able to qualify kids as low income. Pay particular attention here, excuse me, here, that we would be using this chart at the top for the 48 contiguous states. These bottom two are specifically Alaska and Hawaii only. So I think that, if you're having trouble with your threshold, that's probably one of the sources you could use to qualify children.
So David, Kathy wonders, do they have to have actually applied or just be eligible for free and reduced lunch?
Do they actually have to apply?
yes, or can they just be eligible for?
No,
free
they
and
can
reduced
just be
lunch?
eligible.
Okay, I'll
No, they
drop
do,
that.
they do
as
not
well.
actually have to apply.
Okay, and then if it's okay with you, are you at a place where you can take another question, or do you want me to
Yep.
hold off? Let's
Nope.
just go back to the one that where they asked to, I just want to make sure that I write the correct thing in the box. So
Okay.
we're going to go back to Carrie's question because
Sure.
another participant asked, could we please drop the answer in the box?
Yep.
If we are going to use scholarship financial assistance, can only the students that qualify for low income assistance count toward the percentage, or is it anyone that we give scholarship financial assistance to?
Okay, so the answer to that is going to be if you, let's say, if you provide financial assistance to all students or to those that might not be technically free and reduced or low income, you could only count those that would qualify as low income. I know we do have at least one school that provides financial assistance across the board. So in that particular case, that school could only count those that are truly identified as low income.
So you may only count those. So let me read this back and make sure it makes sense. If you provide financial assistance to all students or to those that don't technically count as free and reduced, you may only count those identified low income.
Yeah.
Okay, another question from, make sure I'm in the right place. Debbie asks, did EANS 1 have a certain percentage you had to have in order to be eligible?
It did not.
Did not.
It did not.
Okay. Are there guidelines for EANS 2 that we can see? Maybe she's asking if those are on the website yet. Are they in
those? I don't know if we posted any of that, Kay. However, the notes I did take right out of our application to USAID, out of guidance and out of statute. So most of those notes, they reflect a conglomerate of all those different sources. Kay, have we posted anything else at this point?
The only other thing that we posted should be the updated FAQs, which I double checked just before we went online, and it appears to me like we're back to the March FAQ instead of the September FAQ. So I've asked somebody to check that out for me. But the other thing I would recommend, and we can probably drop that in the chat here as well, is if you really are interested in the technical aspect of this, is to go out and check the USAID webpage, Office of Secondary and Elementary Education, for the source documents, the actual acts themselves from which this information has been distilled. But certainly we can get links up to US OSEE and have that out there for your reference.
Yeah.
David, are you on the screen where you can show the one-time password again to log in? Maybe somebody doesn't have the print off that you emailed, or you can just tell it to me and I can type it in.
Let me pull it up for everybody and then share it again.
If you did not get a copy of the information that David sent out, please either send David an email, or this is k.kennedy2@education.ky.gov. If you'll send me that request, I can get those documents to you. I would say that we will post them on our website However, we are restricted on our website by things that can be translated for the Disabilities Act. And so some of these screens and screenshots are very difficult to get qualified. So we can give those to you in email, but not necessarily post them to our website. So if you need those, please let us know.
Okay, and then Carrie has asked again, is this based on current enrollment or enrollment in 2019-20? So it's 2019-20, correct,
Correct.
David?
Yes, that is
Okay.
correct. That is required in statute.
Yes. Debbie asks, if we use a third party like FACTS FACTS to calculate our tuition assistance, can we use the data from this for documentation that a student was eligible for assistance, or is it solely on the income of the family?
I think you could use, that's a standard system, is that right? I think that's a standard system.
FACTS?
Yeah.
I think it is too.
I believe it is. So yes, you could use that. You could use that particular data source as long as it does include low income status as part of that documentation or as part of that determination.
So I think, David, I think that's the important point that we need to distinguish is you, as an individual school, you can call somebody low income, but that may not be the standard definition of low income, which the federal government has established. And I'll just make up a lot. Suppose your tuition is, I don't know, $20,000 a year. And again, I'm being a little wild. And you want to provide assistance, you know, for people who, you know, can only pay $15,000 a year or something like that. That may not meet the federal definition of a low income person. So be very cognizant that if you're going to use that type of information, that it hasn't been tailored to your specific definition of assistance, that you will still comply with the federal definition, if that makes sense.
So Kay, I'm typing a response and I want to include what you've just said. So I have David's response that yes, FACTS could be used as long as it does include low income status as part of the determination, which adheres to federal guidelines. Do you want me to add that part?
Nope, I think that, I think I was just trying to maybe restate it slightly in a different methodology, but I think we just said the same thing.
Yes.
So I don't need to add which adheres to federal definition. You want me to leave that out?
No, I would put that in.
Okay. And I don't see any other questions at this time in the chat box, and we are about 2 minutes from time. So David, did you have anything else you needed to do before wrapping up?
That's really it. I will point out that the temporary password's right there on the screen in step 2B. If you run into any issues going through the intent, or you have any questions, please don't hesitate to send an email to me. You know, if I'm absolutely swamped, I may ask Elise or Kay to help me out, but you know, make sure that you get your questions answered prior to submitting. Otherwise, you know, we will be opening up the second piece of this application in a week and a half or 2 weeks or so, I guess, week and a half, more like it. So just be prepared for that. It's this hopefully the notes give you an opportunity to kind of reflect on what your needs are and impacts. Some of those impacts, you know, we might see some of the same impacts as were narrated in the first round, but start thinking about that. Take a look at the timeline so you get an idea on that notes page about how much time you're going to have to kind of think and work through this part of the application. You know, you're going to have a little lag time there as we calculate allocations, and then how much time you're going to have to actually fill out the second part of the application. And I do recommend that somebody from your organization be on the next technical assistance webinar as we walk through the second part of the application. But otherwise, we look forward to working with you again. And if you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out.
David, this is Kay. May I just make
Sure.
one,
Yeah.
please? I would like to encourage anyone who is not sure about your qualifying status or whatever, to go ahead and do the best you can. Let's see, how do I say this? If you don't have something in by the end of day on the 22nd, you're out of the ball game. If you have something in and you find out subsequently that it is incorrect, that you really don't meet the qualification, or some other reason that you know that you really shouldn't be participating, you can always withdraw that application. But if you don't get one in by the 22nd, by the date on your sheet, then you're out. Does that make sense? I mean, we want folks to be able to participate in this funding program. We're trying to do everything we can to help you get eligible. So don't leave yourself out in the cold. Go ahead and apply and do the best you can. I mean, if you don't qualify, you don't qualify. I get that. But if you're not sure and the data says you qualify, but you're still not comfortable about it, go ahead and get it in there. We can always withdraw it. Fair enough?
Yeah, and I would say, you know, if you just don't know how to navigate, please reach out. You know, just, you know, my number's on the email I sent. You have my email address, and I may have to go to Kay and ask and work out some questions, but you know, it's better to reach out than not at all. So I agree. Any other questions to wrap it up, Elise? If not, we're gonna.
I
wish
think I
everybody
answered it. Just is this recorded? Yes, it's being recorded and it'll be posted when we can get it posted. And then I also dropped in Kay, your and my email addresses if anybody needed documents that David discussed today via email.
Excellent.
Great.
Thanks.
Yeah, we thank everybody. Hope everybody has a good day and a good holiday. And again, reach out as you need to, and we will talk to everybody later on. So thank you.
Thanks, everybody.